Every crisis, what I've been discovering is every crisis I have that I can overcome is an opportunity to retrain my brain, to trust God more deeply, and to not give in to anger or frustration or fear.
We have to take care of ourselves and accept that, self first is not selfish.
You put them into the psychiatric ward or the ER, nobody ever does a physical examination to see anything.
We can't use psychology to dehumanize people, to demonize people, and in some regards, enslave people. We have to have an openness that is humane, that is loving, that is kind.
But people who have the same difficulties without the support, they're going to fall apart.
Well, welcome back to another episode of the Addy Hour podcast. Definitely appreciate the way you all are continuing to engage and tap into these conversations. If you like what you're hearing, do me a favor, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. You can like this episode. You can also rate our podcast, and you can share it with your friends, because that will really help us continue to grow this podcast community and grow these conversations for what are really important topics for the world today. So appreciate you all doing that. So with that, going to go ahead and jump into today's conversation. Like I said before, this is another one where you all are really in for a treat. That might sound a little surprising given the topic we're going to be talking about today, but the reason I can say that is because I have two powerhouses in the studio here with me. I think this is actually the first time I've had two people in studio with me, so I'm really excited about that as well. But we're going to be talking about this aspect of severe mental illness, and something we really need to be able to bring awareness to. We really need to elevate that conversation, so I feel honored and privileged to be able to do that today. But then also thinking about those of you who have people in your circles, whether friends or family members or loved ones, who are walking through severe mental illness. The two people I have here with me today are really going to be able to share a lot of resources to help you navigate through that, resources and things that they've also learned over time from different training that they've had, from their experiences, from their expertise as well. So I think this is going to be a really meaningful and helpful conversation. So the first guest that I have with me is Corey Minor-Smith. I actually got connected to Corey a few years ago. Corey is a return guest to this podcast, was first introduced to me by Michael Eric Dyson, who was also a guest on the podcast previously. But just to let you all know a little bit about her, I really like the way Rolling Out Magazine described Corey. They described her as a legendary lawyer, renowned attorney, noted mental health advocate, prominent media fixture, and New York Times celebrated author, all of which is true. I can definitely back that up as well. So we're privileged and honored to have her here with us today. She's also former senior counsel for the Department of Housing and Urban Development, an appointment that she had from the Biden-Harris administration. She's also a trained facilitator for the National Alliance on Mental Illness, also known as NAMI, and a lot of that paved the way for her mental health advocacy work. Just to give you a little bit more context, throughout her 25-year career, Corey has dedicated herself to public service as an assistant prosecutor, as a judicial attorney and mayoral cabinet member. And she did all this before serving as general counsel for the same public housing authority that provided housing for her and her family at one point. She's now principal attorney for GC Strategies Legal and Consulting Services and founder of the Wealth Foundation. And I should also mention she is a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I had to make sure I got that in. Corey, welcome to the Addy Hour podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's wonderful being here.
Of course. Thanks so much for joining. There's a backstory there, too, which I don't know if we'll get into about how Corey actually got into town. But I have to thank our next guest for helping out with that as well. So I'd also like to introduce Vicki Sigworth. Vicki is someone that I've also known for a number of years and someone who is, again, just legendary in a sense, a powerhouse in what she does. She previously participated with us in a town hall that we had in New York City where she shared the stage with recording artist and author Lecrae and also NFL veteran and mental health advocate Doug Middleton for an event that we called God Mental Health and I'm blanking on the name now, Wellness in New York City back in 2019. So just to give you some context, Vicki is a mother of 3 adult sons. She's a volunteer also with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the same organization that Corey is involved with, and an elder at her Church to International Church at Yale, and a friend and mentor to many in the city of New Haven. She basically became an international disabilities advocate after one of her sons had a spinal cord injury in India in 2006. She has another son who has severe mental illness. And out of this, Vicki has been able to get involved in NAMI and now leads NAMI family support groups. She teaches a NAMI family to family course, and she's also a volunteer as a peer. She's volunteering as a peer support specialist. Now, as Vicki describes herself, she's a mom, mentor, disruptor, idea generator, lover of the unlovable, initiator, networker, encourager, resource finder, listening ear, and lay advocate. But one of the things that you should know that really stands out about Vicki is that she is one who says her most consistent activity is to come alongside those who are struggling. And so I know that's something that's core to who she is, and she really has a heart for seeing people healed and transformed and really integrating aspects of faith and mental health to get to that place. So Vicki, welcome to the Addy Hour podcast.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Of course. And as you can hear from these accolades, like I said, this is a dynamic and powerhouse room right now. I'm just happy I'm here amongst these queens to be able to facilitate this conversation today. And as you all know, I always like to start just checking in with folks. So Corey, I just want to check in with you and see how you're doing at this point early in 2026 with everything we're experiencing as a society and everything you're continuing to do as an advocate as well.
Well, I appreciate that. The check-in is so important because we just seem to move through our day and not even check in with ourselves. So I appreciate that. But things are going well. In D.C., of course, I am not willing to normalize seeing the National Guard, but having moments coming here for the first time to Connecticut and meeting such great people like Vicki and Anna, who's helping us in the background, and others that I met last night at the Bible study, the trauma healing Bible study. It just gives hope that there is community and people who want to be united in just peace and love and healing.
Yeah.
So I appreciate those moments and allow them to overshadow any of the negative that we experience or even feel when we don't want to experience it.
Yeah, really well said. That hope is so important to hold on to. I'm glad you're feeling that here as well. So,
yes, absolutely.
Vicki, we have to thank you for being a big part of that hope.
Yes.
more than people might even realize or understand. But I think that's just who you are. And I'm glad that you've had that chance to be able to share that with others as well. So thanks for that. Vicki, how are you navigating and feeling at this point in time?
Well, this year was a very rough start. I had a difficult time dealing with the after effects of having a basal cell carcinoma removed on my nose. And it was amazing how intense. I never realized I'm almost 74, and that takes a lot more out of you than I had anticipated. But the last couple of weeks have been much better. I've been really learning how to trust God more deeply in things. And at the Bible study last night, we were looking at Elijah and how after his great victory, he had a really bad moment of being severely depressed, and God just really came alongside him with gentleness and fed him and told him to sleep. And this morning, after a wonderful couple of weeks, we had a little crisis at home. And just before I got here, and I was so happy to be able to have to recall what we had just talked about last night. In the last couple of weeks of being really great, bam, I got slammed this morning. And thankfully, because of the Bible study, I was able to recover. So it's still a road.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing so honestly as well. And I think that's really helpful for people to hear, not that it's enjoyable to go through, but because, when they hear about all the amazing things that you've done as well, sometimes it can be easy for people to think, oh, well, this is someone who's kind of arrived at this place and able to navigate through easily. So to be able to hear you speak honestly about the lessons you're still learning and having to apply those lessons, I think is really, really powerful as well.
Sure. It definitely happens in the moment.
Yes.
In the moment. And you have to just be able to navigate in the moment. We may have our plan. And I've heard this, quote about tell God your plan and hear to laugh or whatever, because we can plan all day, but sometimes in the moment, those plans may not be able to be executed. And we have to learn how to navigate while we're at work, while we're in school, or fulfilling other obligations. And even, when you have a crisis in the morning, like how do you navigate that in order to still come here today to do the podcast or go to work or go to class? So having faith truly helps. And then having those moments of rest. We may not know why, we're tired or we feel or hear something telling us to just rest. We may think we can't because we have to get through this crisis, but you need to rest because it's helping to build up your endurance for something more that you may have to lead others.
Yeah.
And every crisis is an opportunity. That's what we're in the Trauma Healing Bible Study. There's something in Chinese that talks about this. Every crisis is an opportunity, and so every crisis. What I've been discovering is every crisis I have that I can overcome is an opportunity to retrain my brain, to trust God more deeply, and to not give in to anger or frustration or fear. And even though I gave in for a moment this morning. Because I've been retraining my brain and because of last night's Bible studies reminders, I was able to quickly pull back. And so it's not that we don't fail.
Yeah.
Right.
It's that we get up. It's like kids walking.
Yeah.
They have to fall in order to learn how to walk.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow, definitely some important lessons. I mean, we've just started and you all are already sharing so much wisdom and insight. A few things there I definitely want to hold on to, this idea of rest and then also the opportunity to learn along the way, because I think it also ties into trying to navigate when you have a loved one that has a severe mental illness as well. So before we get there, maybe just to give the listeners a little bit of a sense of how you got into this path, so to speak, in life and this path in your advocacy and path of vocation. So Corey, what was the journey that brought you to this place to even have this conversation about supporting a loved one with severe mental illness?
Wow. It takes me way back to the tender age of about 14, 15 years old and having an experience that I hadn't seen. My mother talked about things, being in the walls. I guess those would be delusions and believing that people were saying things or chasing her. But what led me to call for help was her talking nonstop. Literally talking nonstop and ideas of grandiose. And I just didn't understand it. So I called a family member because I couldn't drive at that time. But after my family member came over and could not interact with her or engage her, we took her to the emergency room. And that's when I recall hearing this phrase that I would have to learn over time. What it really truly meant. It wasn't just a diagnosis. And at that time in 1989, it was manic depression, paranoid schizophrenia. We now call bipolar disorder and schizoaffective disorder. I've recently seen on some of the court documents that have been involved with my mom's journey. So with that, learning the behaviors that would come and not knowing what those behaviors meant, and now in my adult years, realizing that they are things that may be a lifetime commitment. And being an only child, I have a lifetime commitment to helping my mother. From college years and her asking to live with me, she lived with me my first apartment off campus.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know what that was going to entail. But I truly appreciate all the friends, other students that helped when they didn't even really realize what they were helping with. I didn't even realize what I was helping with at the time. And ultimately knowing that I'm willing to reach out to whatever resources are available, learning those resources myself, and then helping other families to ultimately not live out of crisis. I did that for many years, and I must say it's only in the last maybe 5 to 7 years that I've learned not to live in crisis, only reaching out for help when there was a crisis. Having a plan of some sort so you know what to do in the times of what may ultimately come to you, which are the symptoms of untreated schizophrenia, because it can be devastating and it can be horrible, but with a plan and with support, it is possible to navigate through it.
Yeah, that's really well said. I'd also like to hear a little bit more about what led to that shift to not only be in crisis mode, because I can imagine someone who has experienced this will be able to fully understand why that would happen, but someone on the outside, not because they're being judgmental, but they might be wondering, well, okay, she said she was 14 when this first happened. Why did it take so long to get to that point? So anything that you can shed light, just to give people a little bit more understanding of what it actually is like to walk through that.
Yes, actually, I moved a lot, at least 21 times before my 10th grade year in high school. And so I did not always live with my mother. But it took that long because we didn't know the severity of her behaviors. And ultimately, I was removed from the home because she attacked me. So I lived with my paternal grandmother, which kind of gave like a buffer in terms of my interaction with my mother until I went to college. So even though this attack happened, she asked to live with me and I couldn't say no. It was like I totally dismissed the fact that she had attacked me. But my love for her just overshadows all of those things, overrides all of those things, and it's still a learning journey. And for the crisis part of it, it started to impact me physically in terms of the stress and, trying to deal with it in real time. And ultimately, I got to a point in having like these feelings of overwhelm with my father, who was not doing well physically, and then my mother, who was not doing well mentally. And again, I'm the only child.
Right.
And I felt like it was draining me. And I needed to figure out how I was going to be able to withstand all of this pressure at any given time and be able to continue to fulfill my life's obligations. I'm now a mother. I was then at that time married, starting my career as a lawyer. And I had to understand how I was going to be able to be a caregiver, not only to my children, but to my mother, and fulfill my dreams in terms of the career path that I chose, and to be able to be this success that I wanted to be and not have my children go through the same types of issues that I did. So with that, it was kind of through, different conferences or learning through NAMI, having a community, informal community that I built, ultimately coming to the realization that we have to take care of ourselves and accept that, self first is not selfish. And in order for you to help others, you literally have to take care of yourself. We hear that every time we get on the plane, right? But it is so true. Like you literally cannot help others if you don't help yourself. And there's an alarming statistic in terms of people who are caregivers dying before the person that they provide care for. And so that really struck me through one of my programs. I do Mental Health Wednesdays, and I had a friend, Fiona, who came on to talk about Alzheimer's because her father was going through that. And I talked about schizophrenia. So we were comparing and contrasting the symptoms that are involved. But she was the first one that I heard that from. And now I'm hearing more about, real statistics as to the number, mostly dealing with dementia, but it's something for all of us who are caregivers, whether you're in the home or long distance, should take heed to and understand that we have to take care of ourselves. Stress doesn't, just show up and say, oh, they died of stress. No, they died of a heart attack. They died of, a stroke or whatever. These are the physical manifestations, as we talked about in the Bible study last night, of the stress. And it's important that we understand that our bodies hold on to that unless we find a way to release it.
Yeah, that's really helpful and really well said. And I'm glad you went, unpack that a little bit too, to really give people the layers in the sense of all the different tensions and things that you're trying to pursue there. Because I imagine even as people are listening, people who are navigating through that will resonate with some of those things and may even be able to step back from that feeling of, oh, I'm being too selfish. And be able to take that step. And then also those who are trying to support others will also hear this and be able to say, okay, this is a time for me to step in. I mean, you talked about how that happened, even when you were in college, with people stepping in as community to really help you in those ways. So many important things. You all may have to slow this conversation down and re-listen. I'm just saying as we're going through, because there's so much important wisdom and knowledge here as well. Vicki, we highlighted this in the intro, but your foray into this in a sense, being an international disabilities advocate, as you call yourself, and then also so much that you've done with NAMI. Can you just elaborate on what that journey has been like for you?
Well, my eldest son was had just come back from a wonderful mission trip to India where he had personally participated in healings and miracles. And he had an adverse reaction to the anti-malaria medication he took. And 25% of Caucasians have an adverse reaction. In fact, many of the, and Valerian was given to all of our military, and many of the atrocities you hear from the military in Afghanistan, people coming back from Sudan, etc., were because these guys literally went crazy when the Valerian can attack their brainstem, etc., and it's either long-term or short-term effects. And so our son he was, I guess, in his junior year of high school. And so we didn't know what was going on. The doctors didn't know what was going on. Nobody knew. And then on top of that, we gave him Accutane for his acne. That has similar side effects. So he got a double whammy from antibiotics. And many people don't know that these kinds of antibiotics can promote serious mental illness. Even Lyme disease can promote serious mental illness. And many people, we even know of a college student here at Yale who had Lyme disease, but she was hospitalized because the people here at Yale thought she had serious mental illness. She was sent back to California, and they found out she had Lyme. And then she ended up coming back and graduating. But so these kinds of biological instigators are usually never addressed by psychiatrists. You know, you put them into the psychiatric ward or the ER, nobody ever does a physical examination to see anything. It's really, really important for family members to insist. There's a brain disease called encephalitis, which mimics schizophrenia. There's a book about it, Brain on Fire, and a podcast. They all thought she had schizophrenia. Finally, somebody figured out that it was something else. And so in the DSM that all the psychiatrists use, they say you're supposed to, first of all, check out physical issues. That is almost never the case. So for family members, I would say, if your loved one is having a mental crisis, first insist, absolutely insist on a physical exam, because they will not otherwise give it. And NAMI can help, help you figure out what some of those things are. We share that in the family to family class, and I add a lot of extra resources because my husband's a professor at the medical school. He just retired, so it's really important to know up-to-date information on these things. So that's what started. But later on, we found out that he had also had early childhood trauma, which we had no idea about. And that is another precursor to it. And we only found out about that because of his delusions. And it was like very strange the way he was responding to things. And we finally put two and two together and discovered what the trauma was.
Okay.
And so all of this was just sort of hitting us like a brick wall. And my husband, like I said, he's a professor. He's a research professor. So they were giving our son medications. And my husband said, oh, well, these medications are very thoroughly vetted, of course, because they do research just like I do, very carefully. I wish that were the case. Then I went to India one time because my youngest son fell off a cliff, as you mentioned. And somebody gave me the book, Anatomy of an Epidemic by Robert Whitaker. Do you know about it?
No, I don't know that book, actually.
Oh, my gosh. He was a journalist and was writing for for pharmaceutical companies. Somebody asked him to do some research, and he ended up going to the Harvard Library and discovering all the facts that, for instance, somebody would want Zyprexa to be FDA approved. Well, Zyprexa, the first 4 weeks, people do fine. By week 8, they're starting to commit suicide. And so guess what? The FDA would only give the first 4 weeks. There's a whole book on that called the Zyprexa Papers.
Wow.
So my husband and I were arguing because I had this just inner sense that there was something more going on before we even knew about the traumas, about my sons, and my husband was saying, no, these things are well documented and well researched. And then I read the book. I said, "Would you please read the book?" And he was like, "Oh my God." He now uses things from that book when he has been teaching his classes here at Yale on how to do research appropriately on human subjects, because the book is just an incredible expose of things gone wrong. And then Robert Whitaker wrote a second book, had a Harvard research grant to do this, which is even more amazing. It's called Psychiatry Under the Influence. And it's with a lot of research. It just blew our minds. And so now we have our son in the system. He's on these meds. We're now learning more and more about these meds are not everything they're cracked up to be. And yet they do help people, but not everybody.
All right.
And our son still hears voices, even though he's on meds, and many people still hear voices. And we've also found more and more information about how when people can get off the meds, they often have the side effects of trying to get off, because the biochemical imbalance theories of depression and schizophrenia, for instance, are not supported by the American Psychiatric Association. Since 1999, they have said, no, it's biological, psychological, and social. And now researchers at Yale, at Harvard, at Rutgers, at Duke, in fact, the editor of the DSM-5, the DSM-4, the previous one, he's now traveling the world saying, guys, 80% of the people on psychiatric meds should not be on them. 20% do need them, and we don't know why. And so this has created a lot of concern and confusion, and that's what really promoted our involvement in trying to help transform the mental health industry, because we have, with all the medications that we have coming out of the U.S., et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, we are one of the sickest nations in the world. In fact, WHO, World Health Organization, had 2 studies 10 years apart, which showed that if you live in Nigeria, India, and Colombia, you are more likely to fully recover or mostly recover from schizophrenia than if you live in the West. Why? Well, Dr. Tom Insel found out. He was leading the National Institutes of Mental Health, and over all the research for 13 years, 14 years, billions of tax dollars on new medications. He finally quit in 2014 or 15. He said, all the money, we have not helped a single patient. So he ended up first going to Google for a year or so, and then he decided to travel the world and wrote a book called Healing. And in it, he prescribed what he discovered around the nation, around the world, what helps. Safe community, a safe place, safe people, and a purpose in life. The 3 Ps, people, place, and purpose. That's what they've had in Colombia and India and Nigeria. They have community, just like you were able to overcome your difficulties because you had support. But people who have the same difficulties without the support, they're going to fall apart. A friend of mine whose mom had schizophrenia, was in the hospital with my son, who passed away. Her daughter is now in the hospital. Why? She has no support.
Yeah. Yeah, that community piece is so huge. And again, so much helpful information that you've shared as well. It's so easy for us in the West to have a dichotomous relationship with the medication idea. Either people say, I hate it, I don't want anything to do with it, or that's the only thing I'm going to try, rather than having this more holistic understanding as you're talking about as well. So I think that's really important. And then just the community in general. I mean, you touched on it in one way, you touched on it in other ways as well, but how have you all built that community? Because I'm seeing different parts of that. There's community for actually navigating when you have a loved one who's walking through a mental health challenge. There's community for even finding out about the resources. And as you encourage listeners to do, to actually push physicians to make sure that they're looking at the whole picture of their physical things. What have you found to be effective in actually building community for the person? Because there's also the advocacy piece as well. And just, I mean, this is not a well-formulated question, but I feel like there's something there that people are probably yearning to hear more about. So Vicki, any thoughts?
Well, our son was hospitalized for 7.5 years, so that he was institutionalized, as I call. It took him a year after he had permission to leave the hospital to first leave the unit and then get into the elevator and then walk out the hospital the doors. We finally got him home after a year. And he had to totally relearn everything. And one of the things we've recently discovered, realized, is we are building community with him right now, just the three of us, him, his father, and myself. And what does community mean? Community means helping each other. So when I was going through my difficulties after my recent basal cell carcinoma cancer, he was there praying with me, praying for me. And one of the things that is important for people to realize is that when they did the they tried to find all the genes. They were looking for the genes for schizophrenia. They couldn't find any particular gene. They found this hundreds of genes that people with schizophrenia had and bipolar. But what they've also discovered is the most consistent genes for people with schizophrenia and bipolar are genes for creativity, for empathy, and for intelligence. And empathy is also social, emotional sensitivity. And what we are discovering is many of these really creative, intelligent people who've had trauma, their biggest problem is their emotional sensitivity. And so there's a new book out, there's been books out for about this, but there's a new movie called Sensitive. And it talks about how a researcher was trying to help sensitive adults. She found researchers working with sensitive kids, and they found people working with sensitive animals. And it's really amazing. If we had understood how sensitive our son was, we could have done things differently. He did have Ritalin when he was in high school because he also had ADHD. And so another portion of the mix often in mental illness is neurodiversity. That doesn't necessarily mean autism. We're discovering that people who are neurodiverse have varieties of neurodiversity, and they end up having trauma in school simply because they're neurodiverse. My son was very bright, is very bright. He had like 98th percentile in math understanding and verbal comprehension. His math computation and his spelling were 23 and 25%. This was in first grade. Okay, turns out he has convergence insufficiency. This is a learning disability. This is neurodiversity. And this is very common for people with the diagnosis of schizophrenia. So basically your eyes take turns shutting off. And so they put prisms, and I have it too actually, prisms on our glasses and tape, and we do behavioral optometry. There's a gal in Woodbridge who does it, and she works with a lot of kids. And it turns out that like 25 or 50% of the kids in New York City have this problem. Many of the kids with learning disabilities have this problem. And they never test for it.
Wow.
Regular optometrists don't know, and ophthalmologists don't know how to test for it. And the symptoms are scratchy, almost illegible handwriting, which all of my kids have. So I wonder how many doctors have this.
You were trying not to say that, but
And so finding out things like this, and then turns out that people who have these kinds of different brains are also more susceptible to like the Lariam and antibiotics.
So it all ties together.
So it all ties together. And then so then you're a square peg in a round hole going through school, and there's trauma right there in the school, even if you're not getting bullied. You're getting bullied by the teachers. And if you're we tried to put him in special ed in Hamden High, he was too bright.
Yeah.
They didn't know what to do with him.
Yeah.
So he just muddled through, and he finally had his break his junior year because of all these things coming together.
Yeah. Really important information. Anything you want to add there? Or, I mean, any direction you want to take it. Vicky's given us a lot.
Yes, for sure. Just the cultural aspect of it that was touched on, but having an openness and us giving space to allow for cultural diversity in treatment, in community building. Many of us have to understand our upbringing and our beliefs, how our belief system was created in terms of religion, allowing space for spirituality and how that is different than religion. And that all is very helpful in embracing ways to help navigate severe mental illness. I think it's important for us to understand what some of the symptoms, there is like this spiritual connection that we as lay people may not understand our loved one going through. But when I see different notes that my mother has written or Bible passages that she has highlighted or may have written on the wall, it gives me the thought that there is a higher level of understanding, perhaps some different connection to a different plane than we are operating on. And you really have to be open to understanding what you don't know, to understand that just because you are not connected to this different plane, the other person is not in the wrong or so, mentally ill that, it's because of their mental illness that they're connected. And they are. And it's like a good thing, not necessarily a bad thing. And it's something that we can learn from. So right now, I feel like I am in this space of learning. There's a documentary, Vicki and I talked about it last night, but there's a documentary called Crazy Wise. And you really have to be open to understand like the purpose of that documentary. It gives us the perspective of different family members who engaged severe mental illness in different ways. And, from allowing, the family member to live in a car, for example, or allowing a family member to leave the home that includes children and a spouse to join this community that understands the same types of symptoms. And there's like a leader, like a shaman, who's able to help manage the symptoms that this person is experiencing and helping them to tap into it even more for building a better community. When we think about history, we can think about Harriet Tubman, for example, and it was said that she heard visions or saw visions. I like to think of that as some different connection, a special connection with a different plane that helped on a broader level, all of the different enslaved people that she was able to lead to freedom because of these visions that she saw. There are a lot of people throughout history who may not have understood their symptoms, and therefore the people around them did not understand their symptoms. We have psychologists who were segregationists and created disorders such as drapetomania to explain why people escaped enslavement. When you would think on a basic human level, there's a reason why people would escape enslavement. But to create a disorder to explain it shows one level of just the inhumanity of people. And then you have these different versions, as you mentioned, the DSM-4 and now 5, the Diagnostics and Statistics Manual. I study from the 4th version and now they're on the 5th version, but how it has, for example, removed homosexuality as a disorder and embracing other things to help us to move forward in a positive way in understanding neurodivergence or other things that may not be explainable for the lay person. And I think that all ties into an openness. But we have to have an openness with some level of humanity. We can't use psychology to dehumanize people, to demonize people, and in some regards, enslave people, enslave them with their symptoms, creating barriers that would disrupt community. So all of that to say, we have to have an openness that is humane, that is loving, that is kind, and helps us to reach out more globally.
Yeah.
Because mental health is I call it a 365 global issue. And there are different ways that other countries address mental illness. Unfortunately, it seems, as they say in the West, it's all reliant on medication, prescriptions. And that leads into a whole nother conversation of who controls the bag, the money. And that's how, we would treat most anything, physical and mental. But when you're open, it leaves you the opportunity to learn about other cultures and how they address mental health and wellness, and embrace those who see visions, the hallucinations and delusions, and most importantly, psychosis, because that's like the wild card.
Yeah.
That's the unknown. And ultimately, with the openness, we want to make sure that everyone is safe, right? We want to make sure that we're able to create a space of community, but that everyone is safe. So how do we address the psychosis while embracing these beautiful visions, that the creativity that also comes with it?
Yeah. So well said. I mean, this is like a master class. Listeners, if you want to pause, you can pause the episode. You can listen back and kind of reflect, because again, there's so much good information here. Too many things I could follow up on, but one thing in particular, just thinking about this idea, because you talked about, I mean, there's a whole level of openness. So I know as some people are hearing you say that, some people are also saying, how do I get to that place of openness? Because this comes up, this is not just severe mental illness, but we all have that tendency to try and fix something.
Yes.
So, I mean, even when we're having conversations about suicide prevention, there's that tendency, like someone is having suicidal ideation. I just want to go in and fix it so they stop thinking this. I don't want to, I wouldn't say this, but someone might think, I don't actually want to listen to what they have to say. I just want to deal with the situation and fix it. I imagine that's also the case with severe mental illness, that tendency to just go and I don't want to try to understand it. I just need to get them to see things the way they should be.
Yeah.
So, and the question for both of you, how do you, because I think everything you said is true, but how do you get to that place of actually having openness and trying to understand something that you might not be able to fully understand because you're not in that mental space with them?
Right.
What does that actually look like?
That's the self-care part of it.
Okay.
You like, in self-care, I feel like it's being overused, it's monetized at this point, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, but the reality of it is truly understanding how you operate. And the way that we move in this country, everything is rushed. Remember microwave generation. I believe we're on I don't even know what's faster than microwave at this point, but we have to understand how we operate, knowing ourselves, taking time to be introspective, and what depletes us, what gives us some level of, inspiration and joy. And with that, it helps you to know what you can do and what you cannot do. So just even dealing with suicidal ideations, I hear it all the time in social media posts that say, I would rather you call me than come to your funeral. But who really feels that way? Are you willing to be on the phone with someone like 20 hours a day? Are you willing to be on the phone with someone while you sleep? They just need to know that you're on the other end. And how long are you willing to do that? Well, you have to understand, how is it impacting you? If you have the responsibility of getting up the next day to do work, are you able to do that if you've been on the phone with someone all night for a week? You have to create some kind of balance and understanding with that other person that needs you in that moment. But you also need you to be able to fulfill your obligations and responsibilities. So that's the part with suicidal ideations, because I have gone through that with multiple people and them relying on me to be the one that listens to them and talks them through how they're feeling. I am not a licensed mental health professional. My master's degree is in guidance and counseling, education, guidance, and counseling, but I am not a licensed mental health professional. And I make that clear with people and, recommend and refer on to a licensed mental health professional. But you can do your part.
Yeah.
You just have to know what your limits are. And that's what I've also learned with my my loved one, because I can get calls throughout the night, again, disrupting my sleep, something that's critically important for me because I, for so many years, have had a difficult time sleeping. So I had to learn, like, I can't have the ringer on, throughout the night. If something happened, I'm just prayerful, having faith that my loved one is safe. Ultimately, that's my goal. My loved one is safe and healthy. So what can I do in the middle of the night? No matter how close I am or how far away, what can I do in the middle of the night? I don't know, but I need to get my sleep. So I had to learn about turning the phone off, the ringer off. And also just in doing things for the loved one, whether it's, addressing the gas company that needs to come in to read the meter, or through your loved one's delusions, damages being done to the home, and you're running, trying to fix everything that's being damaged. Well, you're going to have to manage that. You may not, as soon as a window is broken, be there in 10 minutes to have that window fixed. Or the person is locked out of the house. You may not be able to get someone there within the hour. So having some kind of, again, plan, but knowing the realities of working with other symptoms, other people and their schedules, everything is not going to be done right away. So you can have some level of assurance for yourself that you're doing all you can, when you can, and always having the best interest of your loved one. But you're not going to be able to just fix everything. You're dealing with a whole nother life and all that brings. And you have to give yourself grace.
Yes.
I'll say that. Give yourself grace that you're doing what you can.
Yeah, really well said. I mean, to pull back something that's said in the church a lot, I think some people will hear that and feel like a little bit of a breakthrough. Like, okay, I don't have to hold on to all this, because it's so easy, especially when it's happened. We haven't even talked about when a psychotic episode happens for the first time. So much that people are having to take in all at once. And not necessarily having that place to say, I can't do everything, but just almost in a fight, flight, or freeze mode for your loved one. So I think everything you said, I think it is very freeing for people as well, because it is a balance and it's not easy. But so much that's well said. Vicki, anything you want to react to or add to?
Well, first of all, if we trust God with our lives, then we can trust God that He will equip us, not from our own strength, but with His strength, to be able to, even when our mistakes,
Wow, that's good.
be able to be the people He's calling us to be for our loved ones. And I think of the idea, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to be of a support to a person with serious mental illness. And often the person themselves is not willing to participate in the village, but the family members desperately need that. The other thing is talking about psychosis. I've been trained as a hearing voices facilitator. And this was after Sandy Hook. The Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services here in New Haven found out about the Hearing Voices movement, which started in Belgium and then moved rapidly to England, when a psychiatric patient was excited when talking to the other patients, our voices have meaning, our voices have meaning. And so we have learned that voices do have meaning. So if the voice says, don't go outside, what that's saying is not that going outside is dangerous, but you see, people with psychosis often are so overwhelmed by their own emotions because they have such intense emotions, because they're emotionally sensitive. They are overwhelmed by their own emotions and the emotions that they pick up from everybody else, that they just sort of shut down their emotions. And so their voices are there often to help them understand what they are feeling, but because they don't even feel it anymore, because it's too overwhelming. So when a voice says, don't go outside, if somebody who's been trained in the Hearing Voices Network can say, oh, my suspicion is that your voice is actually telling you that you're scared to go outside.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a possibility? Oh, and just take a moment. Yeah, I guess so. And even this morning when our son was in crisis, after I got over my own little crisis, I was able to pull back and say, so what was going on in your mind? What crisis was going on in your mind? And if we can get our loved ones to start talking to us rather than just keeping everything in their head, because then they end up talking to their voices, and their voices are talking to them, and their voices can be very comforting at times, and then they can flip on a dime and become very accusatory. You're a loser. You're never going to amount to anything, blah, blah, blah. And so if we can help our loved ones to understand their voices and to embrace that their voices are not something to just be rejected and medicated away, but their voices can be something useful. And, so we have little hats. Voices have meaning,
Nice.
Yeah. And there's all trainings available for family members in the Hearing Voices Network in helping each other to learn how to love our loved ones. And then for our loved ones who are willing to do this, there are Hearing Voices group where they can talk to each other. Well, gee, this and this happened. And then somebody else who hears voices, oh, yeah, I understand that. Do you think it's because of this? Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
And so it can build a community. But my two younger sons were traumatized, frankly, by what their older son was. My older son was going through, and they did not want to have anything to do with him until they took the Hearing Voices training.
Wow.
When they took the Hearing Voices training, then they suddenly began to understand their brother better, and they could relate to him better, and they were no longer so judgmental. So 2 trainings I would highly, 3 actually. One is the NAMI Family to Family, because it gives you so much information. And it provides you with a safe community to talk with. Because we family members, first of all, need a safe community.
Definitely.
Because we don't often get it in the church or in our friends. You're just a bad parent or a bad child or something. And then the second thing is the Hearing Voices movement. There's national and international groups. And then the third thing is emotional CPR. And the emotional CPR was developed by people who heard voices. And a psychiatrist named Dan Fisher really put it all together. He's at the National Empowerment Center in Boston. And he's traveled around the world, to Ukraine, to the Philippines, all over, teaching people around the world how to listen. And the idea is that you listen with respect, with curiosity. So instead of judging what somebody's saying or what somebody's doing, oh, tell me more, and trying to get them to verbalize and vocalize what they're doing. And so if you can get your loved one to verbalize with with you being open, then you become a safer person. So the emotional CPR and the Hearing Voices training teaches you how to become a safer person. And then you can start building community with that person.
Yeah.
That's very important. And appreciate all of the resources that you are providing. And it just leads again back to the openness and being able to read and understand and allow yourself room to grow. My first, introduction into metaphysics would be Louise Hay, a book that was recommended to me, You Can Heal Your Life. And this concept of dis-ease, from stress or whatever is happening or has happened to us. We talked last night about the book with Oprah Winfrey and a doctor. I can't think of the doctor's name right now, but what happened to you? We don't take the time. Everything is fast paced in our culture, in this society. In this society. And if we had the time or willing to take the time to learn more and to have those conversations with our loved one, it could perhaps lead to a better relationship with the loved one. I think about my interactions with my loved one, and sometimes the thoughts are just so aggressive and so just violent. I don't see how I can engage the conversation, but I'm learning a lot from Vicki in the last 2 days, and just, whether I would be willing to ask certain questions. I think that with questions that I've asked before, the responses just weren't something that I wanted to continue to engage in the conversation. So I say all of that to encourage family members, friends, to not give up, to create the space you need with your loved one, and be willing to continue to engage whenever you're able to engage. People often ask me, how do you, keep doing this through all these years? And it is through creating a safe space, not just with or for my loved one, but for myself. Again, leading to the self-care. You have to have boundaries, and those boundaries are unique to you and your circumstance, what you are willing to learn and what you are willing to experience with your loved one. So all the different trainings, if that's something that you are willing to learn, it could help with engaging your loved one even more. So I ultimately want people to understand that we're not glossing over these experiences or giving like a kumbaya path to glory, but things that we've learned through research, through reading, and ultimately through lived experience, and continuing to try to live our lives to the fullest. My goal for my loved one is to provide the highest quality of life and safety and love that is possible, but understanding that doesn't mean that there's always happy times. This movie, it was for children, but it's really about life, and that's Inside Out.
Yes.
Disney Pixar.
I knew you were going there.
Inside Out. We have to allow ourselves to feel all of the feels, all of the feelings. We discussed this last night a little bit in the Bible study, and, feeling. What do you do with these different emotions? But I feel like God gave us emotions for a reason, and it's for all of us to learn how to manage our emotions. You can't force yourself to be happy all the time. What you should, or I encourage people, invite people to do, is learn how to navigate through your emotions, even anger, even jealousy. We have to learn how to navigate through those things. We can learn great things, have a better insight on life if we learn how to manage all of the things that we feel. Even if it's fear, I have a very difficult time navigating the fear that I have for my mother, because she's my mother. You're not supposed to fear your mother. But what does that mean for me? Is that fear going to block me from helping her when she needs help? Or am I using that fear to translate it into the love I know I have, finding that love and allowing it to be the path to help in any way that I can, while keeping myself safe? Because I'm not feeling fear for no reason. There is sound reason. But I'm very cautious in talking about the fear, because I don't want other people to fear their loved ones just because they have or experience psychosis. It can be scary. I want to be real about that. But there is still the path to loving your loved one and helping your loved one, and just knowing when you have to make sure you're following your own boundaries in terms of when your loved one's behaviors are very clear and it may not be a good time to be around them. And what I found helpful for me is the others that are a part of the treatment team. I may not be able to communicate directly with my mother at certain times, but the guardian may, or someone from the assertive community treatment team, ACT team, may be able to, or some other person that's in this circle of assistance. Somebody at some point is able to communicate. It may not always be you. And I want to say to family members, you don't have to be the one that's the guardian. You don't have to be the one that has the direct contact, and to do your best not to feel guilty about that, but understanding that may be a part of the journey when you're dealing with psychosis and untreated symptoms, because it can be dangerous at times.
Yeah, really important. I'm glad that you highlighted that as well. But they also just tying back to that, as you said, community. You're not doing this in isolation.
Yes.
I mean, even though, you all met physically in person less than 24 hours ago. But already, I'm sure the listeners can tell there's been a lot of community amongst the two of you just to share things back and forth, and how important that's been as well. And I'm hopeful that we've been able to create that in this conversation as well. So many important things. I mean, I've been joking about pausing, but I've actually been serious about that as well, because I think there's a lot that people can take from this. But as we close, also want to give both of you the opportunity to share with people about specific resources that may be helpful for them. Vicki, I know you've mentioned some things already, but any additional things you want to add?
There's something called mental health first aid, which a lot of people know about. The challenge with that is what it pretty much does is it teaches you how to help get someone into the hospital. And I would really recommend the emotional CPR because that teaches you how to do this open conversation. And they're often comparable. The Hearing Voices Network. Also, there's something called Open Dialogue that has an 80% full recovery rate for first episode psychoses without medication.
Wow.
And so it started in Lapland about 30 years ago, and we're bringing it very, very gradually here. It's been very active in Vermont and New Hampshire, one of those places up there for the past several years. Is at Emory University. They're doing research here at Yale. And so that's also where it teaches family members how to communicate with their loved ones. And I think communication is really, really key. And one of the things that we're also learning is if you can remember that your loved one is probably very compassionate. And there have been times when we've been starting to learn how to share our negative feelings with our son and say, you know what, I'm feeling scared right now. Would you pray for me? And the fact that he's been willing to pray for me, he's finding a purpose in life, and then Bible studies. I mean, they're doing Bible studies with people up in Harvard, inpatients. And, our son did Bible studies with his doctors. We do Bible studies. He listens to Scripture. He asks for us. He asks for prayers, and we have a Monday morning prayer group. We all have kids with schizophrenia, and we are learning how to pray differently because, first of all, mental illness is on a spectrum, and what our family members are going through is really not that much different from what we go through. We get angry, we get scared, we get frustrated. They do too. And if we can recognize that they are not that different from us, and if the clinicians can recognize they are not that different from us, then there will be a lot more compassion.
Yeah. So well said.
Yeah, compassion is very important. Empathy and just having some level of understanding. I keep going back to the same word, but open, being open.
Yeah.
And with that, I feel that way about resources as well. As I continue to learn about different organizations and their mission and their stance on how to address mental illness, what we're doing now is not anything that hasn't been done before. And I hope that we can learn from history and how this country has treated people with severe mental illness and how this country is moving right now. But with advocacy, we are able to continue on a good path. There are those who are proponents of assisted outpatient treatment. There are those who oppose it. There are those who are proponents of voices and hearing voices and understanding and helping those to have a higher quality of life when you are able to manage and communicate positively with the voices, and there are those who oppose it. There are so many different organizations, and I'm learning them all. But where I am right now is just understanding how we can use parts of all of these different resources to, again, help our loved one have the highest quality of life. I've seen my mom in mental institutions. I feel like I grew up crossing the thresholds of mental health institutions, you know, from being a high school student to becoming a mother and, you know, strolling my childhood through there to being a lawyer. But learning it all is that there are moments in time. You know, as Vicki indicated, our son spent 7.5 years there. I don't know how many years, you know, we've been dealing with this with my mother, but there have been times where she has even been willing to be in the hospital, to be institutionalized. And what I've learned is that it's a part of the journey in having support so that you can come back to the community and live independently and self-sufficiently if those support systems are in the community. So we need to have the community organizations. We need to have them properly funded. Since 1965, 68, you know, whenever the Medicaid and Medicare Acts were first passed and institutions were closed, they haven't been properly funded. We need to have our community-based organizations properly funded so that people are paid living wages and able to have longer-term tenures at these organizations, and that we don't have them closing down every other year and people in the community don't know where to go for help. Doctors are changing, the nurses are changing, the ACT team members are changing, the guardians are changing. If we can have some consistency that helps our loved ones to be able to build the relationships, to have the trusted community that we would like them to be able to have. There's like this false expectation of our loved ones, you know, well, they're not engaging. Well, the guardian changed like 5 times in the last year. Like, how do you expect them to just connect? It's as if some people who are mental health professionals don't recognize the symptoms when they're clear, you know, like is a part of their disorder. So how are you expecting them to just attach to someone and engage with them? So with all of that, I'm saying it's important to have resources and to be open to the different types of programs and services that these different organizations have. And with that, you can understand what may be for you and your loved one and what may not be. I encourage people not to just automatically shut out anything. Allow yourself to learn and explore what's available and find what is best for you and your loved one. For those who are parents, it's kind of like what you do as a parent, learning whether, you know, the different types of learning that our children may go through, you know, whether you want them to have medication or you don't, and then what resources are available for either path that you take. So if you have a loved one who is living with severe mental illness, whether it's treated or untreated, what resources are best for you and your family that can help ultimately for them to have the highest quality of life possible and to be able to live safely in the community independently as long as they're able.
Right. Yeah. So well said.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes.
Nutrition and food is also a really good, food as medicine. There are so many books out there. Vitamin D is implicated in mental health issues. Vitamins B, B12, B6, etc. Fish oil is very helpful. A lot of things. Alcohol is not. Pot is not. You know, exercise is. Sleeplessness is not. You know, all of these physical things. And first of all, we have to do that.
Right.
And then, you know, to help our loved ones move in that direction. And we have seen a huge, huge change in our son as he has been eating healthier. You know, gluten. We did a test on him. And you can test to see which foods might produce more brain inflammation.
Yeah,
Brain
yep.
inflammation is implicated.
Yeah, definitely.
So, we're gluten-free and dairy-free. And different, and plus a whole bunch of other stuff. So there's a lot of biological stuff that people don't even think about.
Yeah.
In addition to
Absolutely.
all these other things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nutrition is huge.
We bypass what we think are easy or the low hanging fruit,
Yeah,
right?
Yes, yes.
We can go without eating an apple a day, but drinking water, plenty of rest,
Yeah.
the simple things that we just, that's not going to help, but
It does.
actuality it does.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And to your point, the research just in some ways is catching up even with this whole aspect of nutrition and starting to actually realize how much the gut microbiome actually impacts the brain and mental health and all those types of things. So.
Yes.
The keto diet for helping
Yeah.
people with psychosis if you do it carefully.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Well, there's been so much good information. I'm going to make a note. Our guests have also given you all some homework. If there are things you want to look up afterwards, pay attention to the source. We did talk last week about not using Google MD, but make sure you also have trusted people that you can rely on as well. But you've also heard a lot of good books from Vicki as well that you can look into, and some from Corey as well. So definitely. And Corey's book, do you want to give it one quick plug?
Sure. #driven.
Yep.
Yes. By Corey Minder-Smith. And you could go to my website, CoreyEmpowers.com. A lot of resources. I call it my go-to mental health guide. Also have a small little tips is how to love a loved one with severe mental illness. But these are all free downloads. And just giving you the first step to researching more. And I love my go-to mental health guide because of things that helped me, movies, podcasts, books, documentaries. There are little groups that you can follow on Facebook or profiles you can follow on Instagram, but all just giving you general information, foundational information that you can research more.
Yeah.
So I strongly encourage it. I mean, one of the first things I saw outside of my mother and I was a movie called Out of Darkness, and it stars Diana Ross. 1994. It was a TV movie. It's hard to find right now, but a friend of mine was able to find it on eBay. But it was so closely aligned with my life, and it helped me to understand that this was bigger than just my mother and I. Which at the time I didn't know or understand.
Yeah.
You're
So
not
important.
alone.
Yeah. So important.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's sort of the NAMI watchword.
Yeah.
Not NAMI watchword. You're not alone.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's what's important.
Yeah. Great way to end things up. Wow, this has been the fastest hour and some change that we've had on this podcast. So many good things. Encourage you all again to really listen back and pause and take notes, and so many things that you all shared. I appreciate you all being here. I'm thankful that you made it into town with all the snow that we experienced. And thank you all for tuning in. Stay tuned for many more important conversations coming up in the next episodes.